Good morning. So great to see so many faces here this morning. Please open your Bible to Psalm 114. Psalm 114. If you're visiting us for the first time, welcome to the base. Trust you'll enjoy the morning with us. You'll find out that we're radical about Jesus and we might do things that's a bit unorthodox, but please excuse us. It's just our passion that we cannot hold back. And we're talking through a series, we're preaching through a series called Serving the Purposes of God. And every week we've looked at the heroes of faith in Hebrews 11, learning from their ways, learning from their lives, because to serve the purposes of God simply means this: you have to start to speak the Word of God to address the dysfunctionalities that's in our culture, that's in our context. So this morning I want to deviate a little bit from Hebrews 11. I want to take a bit of time for us to look at Psalm 114. Because what you find in the book of Psalms, Marku positioned us this morning, is you can look at this book of Psalms and just read it as interesting material, or you can look and understand that if you want to get an insight into the mind of Jesus, how he thinks about things, you can start to pick up his mind in the book of Psalms. And so I've started at Psalm 1 and I'm busy going slowly through the whole book of Psalms, just looking for the mindsets. What are the certain ways I have to set my mind to think? And this morning we get to Psalm 114 and there's a powerful link here. We're going to serve the purposes of God. We're going to have to learn how to move with the might of his presence. So I'm so humbled when the Lord lines up things, how the whole song set and the words that come is about God moving, God moving. If we're going to serve the purposes of God, we're going to have to learn how to move with the might of his presence. And I trust that you're expectant this morning. I trust that your heart is open and say, Lord, I want you to move on me this morning. Because I tell you what, when you start to address the dysfunctionalities in culture, when you start to address the dysfunctionalities in South Africa, when you start to address the dysfunctionalities in your family, you speak to the dysfunctionalities of your mother-in-law, you need to know how God moves, because you might get a little bit of resistance. You're right. Let's read Psalm 114 together. It says, when Israel came out of Egypt, the house of Jacob from a people of foreign tongue, Judah became God's sanctuary, Israel his dominion. The sea looked and fled. The Jordan turned back. The mountains skipped like rams, the hills like lambs. Why was it, O sea, that you fled? Why was it, O sea, that you ran away? O Jordan, that you turned back? You mountains, that you skipped like rams, you hills like lambs. Tremble, O earth, at the presence of the Lord, at the presence of the God of Jacob, who turned the rock into a pool, the hard rock into springs of water. Holy Spirit, you don't need our permission to move. You are God. But this morning I come and I ask you, because I want to make sure that you do not miss us this morning. I want to ask you to make sure that we don't miss you this morning. I ask that your word this morning, Lord, would not just be interesting information. I ask for the weightiness of your word to confront us, to transform us. And I ask for the hearers of the word this morning that their hearts would burn inside of them. And so we invite you this morning, Jesus. For you to move is not a foreign thing. You've done it many times in the past. But this morning we ask for you to move in our midst yet again. We bless you and we honor your great name. I ask you to anoint me afresh so that I can serve your people well. In Jesus' mighty name. Amen. So it's an interesting psalm, Psalm 114. If you look at the commentators on it, if you look at the clever guys that have to give you information on it, and all of the beautiful dictionaries and all the lexicons and stuff that you can use as tools, they don't actually say much. So what do you do now? Well, you start to look at the scripture for yourself. You start to look at what this author had in mind. We don't know who the author is. We don't know who he was speaking to. We just know that he was wrapped up in this awesome presence of God. He says this presence of God is so mighty, is so powerful, it does things. Nature responds to his presence. Speak about the sea, speak about the Jordan, speak about the hills. There's something that moves when you encounter the might of God's presence. So where do we start this morning? I want to point your attention to verse 1. Because what I want to show you is that God moves with those and for those who moves with him. Some of you are saying, where's God? Where's God? Well, maybe you need to ask, are you moving with God? Because if you are moving with God, God will move for you. You're right. God moves for those who move with him. How do you know that you are moving with God? It says in verse 1 that God called Israel out of Egypt. The Israelites were slaves. They were slaves serving Pharaoh. But in one moment, God called them out of slavery. He called them out of Egypt. He says, I've got an inheritance for you. I've got promises for you. I've got freedom for you. Israel responded to that call, and the moment they responded, they moved with God, and God started moving for them. It said that God loves to move for those who allows God to become his sanctuary, who start to dwell in God. It says God becomes the sanctuary for those who move with him. It's an amazing thing if you think about the gospel, that Jesus says, if you believe in me, me and the Father will come and make our dwelling place with you. We'll move in. You become the hot property. You become the address where heaven starts to stay. God dwells in you, if you believe the gospel. And then it says, God moves for those who submits to his dominion. He says Israel has become his dominion. God is ruling over them. If you want God to move for you, you have to respond to his call. You have to listen this morning and say, oh my goodness, I'm in slavery. Jesus is calling me out. Jesus, I am coming this morning. I'm not taking one more day in slavery in Egypt. I want you to come and dwell in me. I want your spirit to live in me. And then, Lord, I want to submit to your rulership. What you say, you get. Sounds like the gospel, isn't it? It sounds exactly like the gospel. When Jesus calls you out of death and he says, I'll give you life, you have to respond. If you don't respond to that call, you're going to get stuck in death. If you don't allow God to come and make his dwelling inside of you, God is not going to move on your behalf. If you don't submit to his rule, to how he wants things done, then God ain't going to move for you. But if you move when God calls, if you open your heart when God calls you, and you allow him to have the last say, I've got good news for you this morning. God will move with those who move with him. That means if you're a believer here this morning, if you have believed in Jesus, you've trusted him, I've got good news for you. You are moving with God, and therefore God will always move with you. If you don't believe in Jesus, I've got sad news for you. If you have opinions about Jesus, but you're not submitting to Him, I've got sad news for you. If Jesus is knocking at your heart this morning, but you're saying, I don't think I really need to respond to Him, I've got sad news for you. If you've got opinions this morning saying, no, I don't know, this thing doesn't really work for me. I've got this, I've got that. I've got sad news for you. God has invited you to come and move with Him. And the reason you're stuck is because you're so prideful. The good news is, if you move with Him, He'll move with you. You're right. I sat with a pastor yesterday. He's leading a church in Zenzele, small little settlement outside of Randfontein. I asked him, what was the price like the last 10 years? He says, there were many Christmases we had nothing to eat while people around us was partying. I said, wow, what made you going? What kept you going? He said, man, the door is still open for people to come to Jesus. Jesus has not closed that door yet. That keeps me going. The door's open for you if you will humble yourself this morning. The door is still open. You can still respond to this call, and God will move on your behalf again. What I like about this passage, it doesn't just speak about how God moves with those who move with Him. It speaks about the moments when God moves. God moves in moments when you run out of momentum. I like that about God. I like that about God. You have to walk with God just for a little bit and realize there's moments where you run out of momentum. It's like, man, this thing is difficult. This thing is tough. Nothing seems to work. Anyone that can relate? It's about 20 honest ones. So what this writer of the psalm does is he's looking back in history. He's looking to moments in the story of Israel where God moved when it seemed like Israel has lost all its momentum. I love that about God. I can walk with Him. I can trust Him. And when I get to a place where there's an obstacle, it says, okay, now let me move on your behalf. Here's a moment now. If you'll allow me, I will use my presence in a moment to cause you to walk with momentum again. I wonder how many of us this morning has lost momentum in our walk with the Lord. Got good news for you. If you will allow the Lord, in a moment this morning, He will unlock momentum on your life again. Let's look at some of these examples in the Old Testament. There's a lot of stories here. I'm going to try and cut it as sweet and smooth as I can for the sake of time. Let's look what it says. The moments when God moves for His people. The first one He mentions, He says the sea, in verse 3, the sea looked and fled. Verse 5 says, why was it, O sea, that you fled? What is he referring to, this writer? What moment in history can he possibly referring to when the sea said, oh my goodness, God is present, let's run? Can you think? Anyone in the middle section? You think? You think of a moment like that? Moment at the Red Sea. I mean, they've just painted the doors with blood. The death angel is over them. They're going to live to tell the story. And like, oh my goodness, God is setting us free. There's silver, there's gold. It seems like serving the Lord is just a huge blessing till you get to your first obstacle. And the enemy is pressing in your backside and there's nowhere to go. Because the Red Sea is blocking your exit. The writer of the Psalm says, my goodness, let me tell you about what it looks like when the presence of God shows up and you have got no more moving space. Let me show you what it looks like when you run out of options because God's about to move. Wow. Should get you excited, sir. How many of us this morning feel like you're out of options? Like, oh my goodness, the enemy is pressing me and I've got nowhere else to go. But good news for you. God is about to move on your behalf. You don't know, Janus, I've got 6 months behind on my rent. Well, it's a miracle that you're in that house still for 6 months if you're 6 months behind. It's a miracle they haven't kicked you out yet. They might be biting your backside for the money, and you look, I don't know where to go. God is about to move. God loves to move on behalf of those who's out of options. It says when the presence of God hit the Red Sea, it says the Red Sea started running away. It started running away in such a manner that the Israelites says, oh my goodness, there's a gap, we can actually make it. How many of you would love to see a Red Sea moment? Well, you've come to a good place this morning. Because you are going to see impossibilities open up. You're going to say, how's that possible? It is not, but by the might of His presence. That's the God you serve. That's the God that you responded to. That's the God that you are walking with. How many of you have seen Him move in the past in moments like that? Wow. How many of you are still waiting for a moment like that? Then you've come to a great place this morning. He's going to move on your behalf. Then this writer goes back to a second moment in the history of Israel. This moment, he says, it was when the Jordan was at flood stage. Remember that story? Joshua is now the leader. They're looking at the promised land. The fear and the unbelief of the first generation is behind them, and now there's a new generation. They're saying, give me my inheritance. I want to go for it. One small problem. The Jordan is at flood stage. Have you seen the Crocodile River in the Kruger National Park of the last couple of weeks? Anyone? That's a river in flood. You don't even see the little brug you have to go over. It's lost in the water. There's no way getting through. This writer says there's a moment in the history where Jordan in its flood stage, God's presence pitched up in that moment. The people were prepared. They were ready for the promised land, but they had this massive obstacle of a body of water. They couldn't get through. The Lord says to Joshua, Joshua, you just watch what my presence would do. I don't know about Joshua. I don't know if he's of sy broek gebewe het en sy bas bang was nie. I'm not sure. But I tell you, it's quite something when people are saying, man, we're ready to go. We want to go into fullness, but my goodness, look at this natural obstacle. God says, don't you worry. The might of my presence is going to do something in your midst today. Most amazing thing, it says when the Levites that carried the ark of the presence of God, the moment they stepped their foot into that little bit of water at the Jordan, it says the Jordan backed up. Water normally flows downhill. You realize that? That day, because of the presence of God, the water started turning around and it started running uphill. Hello? There's no plumber that can do that. But the presence of God. says, as the Israelites, as the Levites put their foot in the water, Jordan turned back, started flowing against the natural flow of things. It says, as they stepped in, it says, God says to Joshua, I will make clear the direction that you are to go. Wow. I don't know about you, but that excites me. Because I reckon at the base, you've been prepared. At the base, you've been equipped over the last little bit, especially you've been a part of the base for a long time. And now the Lord says, I've prepared my people, but now I want to release them into the promises. But oh my goodness, what about all the limitations? What about all the obstacles? God says, thank you for asking. Invite my presence and see how I open things that will go against the flow of nature. Do you serve a God like that, sir? Or is your Jesus small? Or do you serve a God that is able to get things to move against its natural design? I don't know about you, sir, but I serve a God like that. There's many of you. God has prepared you, and you are longing and looking at the promises. You're looking for the fullness. You just want to go there, but you say, I just don't know how, because the limitations of my natural impossibilities is limiting me from stepping in. I want to invite you this morning, just take the first step. The Lord will make it clear. You're right. God loves to move for those who find themselves in impossible places. See, it doesn't help we read the Bible. I know these stories are in the Bible. What do they mean? We have to get the meaning out of it. When you get the meaning, you get understanding, you get faith. My goodness, you become dangerous. And then it says the moment where God breaks in is a moment, according to Psalm 114, where the mountains skip like rams and the hills like lambs. Now, if you were to look at a little reference in your Bible, you'll find according or next to that reference, Judges 5, verse 5. Another moment in the history of Israel this writer is thinking about. Now, the story in Judges chapter 5 is a very odd story. If I were to tell you some of the characters this morning, you'd think, yes, I wonder if I've even ever heard about their names. The story in Judges chapter 4 and Judges chapter 5 is about Deborah. You know her? Ladies, who's your favorite? If Deborah is, raise your hand. Deborah. Not yet, okay? It's like one of those prophetesses just in the wayside. She did some mighty things with God. Wasn't recognized. She was mighty. It says that she would rule at her palm tree. She had a palm tree named after herself. The palm tree of Deborah. However you want to pronounce that name. She was mighty in God. She was the only woman or the only person that had conviction that God could move in their midst. She was so convinced, she went to Barak and said, Barak, the enemy is crouching at our door. You're going to have to do something about this. You know what Barak says? He says, only if you hold my hand. She says, well, okay, I'll do that. No problem. But know this, that the victory that the Lord is about to bring will not be for your benefit. It'll always be known that a woman led you into victory. Let's just look at the story a little bit because there's so much in this moment. The enemy at that point was Jabin. He had an army. He's a Canaanite king. He's quite a mighty ruler. The commander of his army was a man by the name of Sisera. Interesting name, Sisera. And the Lord said to Deborah, listen, Barak, you go against Sisera's army and the Lord will defeat him. And so Barak, holding Deborah's hand, runs into a battle, and can you believe it? The Lord shows up. And the army is so intimidated, they splash all over the place. And Sisera reckons, I'm going to run and I'm going to hide. And so he runs to a friend who has a wife. Her name is Jael. Have you ever heard of that lady? Maybe one or two. But Jael is mighty in God. So she invites Sisera into the tent. She says, you must be exhausted. He says, just give me some water. She says, I will do over and above. I'll give you a latte. And she opens up a bag of milk and she feeds him so full that he says, listen, I had so much pressure. Can I just go and lie down? She says, listen, come lie down here. I'll cover your head. No one will know that you're here. And while Sisera is thinking, oh my goodness, whoo, and he starts to snore away, Jael reckons, now's my chance. And she takes a tent peg, she puts it over his head, and she takes one blow, and she strikes him dead. Wow. Wow. You said, I don't want to read the New Testament because it seems God's angry at his enemies. Well, if you read the New Testament, you'll find out God's still angry with the enemies. He's just looking for a people that will trust in him to move on their behalf. So what happens? Why is this moment so unique? This moment where Jael kills this official. Why is it so unique? It's so unique because when they start to sing the victory songs of Barak and Deborah, as they sing the songs, they say, oh, the mountains shake at the presence of God. The hills, they jump at the presence of God. What are they thinking about? They're thinking back all the way to that moment, sir, when God said, I'm going to come and sit on this mountain and give my people my law. Because it says that day, the mountains shook. The hills jumped. The people looked and said, oh my goodness, this God is powerful. This God is holy. We have to obey his word. What is the point of the story? Thank you so much for asking. There's moments in your life as you move with God where the enemy will corner you and pin you down and you think, I can't breathe. There's no space to move. I don't know what I'm going to do. And in that moment, God says, watch me. And God destroys your enemy in the most unorthodox of ways. And when that happens, you realize, oh my goodness, God is so powerful. I'm trembling at his word. I wonder how many of you this morning are feeling pinned down by your enemies. I wonder how many of you this morning are so afraid. I don't know if I can serve Jesus. I don't know if this thing will work out. I wonder how many of you this morning are saying, Jesus, can you help me? Can you move on my behalf? When Jesus destroys your enemies, it will leave you trembling at the power that's in his word. See, God has got these moments to move when you run out of momentum. That's what makes him God. That's why we worship him. That's why we say, Lord, we need your presence. Would you move? Would you rest on us? Would you come? You are dwelling inside of us. This is the dwelling place of God. Would you come and put the might of your presence on us? We need a moment where you give us momentum again. Move the obstacles. Move the impossibilities. Shatter our enemies. We tremble at the holiness of your word. How are you doing this morning with the word of the Lord? How are you doing in revering this written word? People gave their blood to give you this document. Every now and then you just page it through your YouVersion, scripture of the day. You know why? Because you've never seen God destroy your enemies. It's like, yeah, religion, it's like I'll do it Sunday morning. But when you taste what it feels like when God moves on your behalf to destroy your enemies, my goodness, my friends, this thing starts to take a whole new dimension in your life. Some of you this morning, if you'll allow God, He will move with the might of His presence to get you free from addiction. He will move to bring healing to your body. He will move to restore miraculously, creatively in the places you think, I don't think it's possible. I've got good news for you. With the might of His presence, He destroys your enemies. Good news, man. It's good news. You don't have to worry about your kids. The Lord has got them. I don't know where your husband is at, but you don't have to worry about him. The Lord has got him as well. The Lord is going to blow him away. I don't know where he's at. I don't know how that works. He does. You can just trust him. Just rest in him. He will move mightily on your behalf. And then the story continues in Psalm 114. If you read with me, it says the following. Verse 7. It says, what happens when the mighty presence of the Lord comes in? Nou moet julle luister, man, en nou moet julle luister. It says, tremble, O earth, at the presence of the Lord, at the presence of the God of Jacob, who turned the rock into a pool, the hard rock into springs of water. I find that interesting. I mean, why doesn't he talk about the God of Abraham here? Why doesn't he talk about the God of Isaac here? I mean, they were mighty men in God. Why does he refer to the God of Jacob? Why does he say that, man? Who wants to take a wild guess? You're not going to fail it. We're not going to chase you out of the church if you get it wrong. Who wants to take a wild guess? Why does he say the God of Jacob? Who was the stubborn one out of the three? Abraham, Isaac, or Jacob? Jacob was. So what does Jacob end up doing for one whole night? He's wrestling with the Lord. He's saying, no, I want my way. God says, okay, let's struggle a little bit. Let's fight a little bit. Let's wrestle a little bit. And it says that Jacob was quite a powerful wrestler. He had some muscle on him, must have been. Because to keep the Lord busy the whole night, I mean, that's quite something. Or the Lord was just playing with him. I think that's a better translation. Better meaning. And so as Jacob got to the end of his struggle the whole night, he's realizing, oh my goodness, my carbohydrate intake is way low. I'm going to have to tap out. He says, listen, who are you? And if you are who I think you are, will you bless me? The Lord says, okay, I'm the Lord. I will change your name. Jacob will become Israel because you've struggled with God. You know what Jacob says as he goes home? He says, oh my goodness, I saw God face to face. And as God was about to leave the fight, God did something to Jacob that changed the way he walked forever. What did God do? It says, just by the way, it was a nice appetizer, the wrestling match, Jacob. Just so you know, watang, He hits him on the hip. There was no healing in that moment. There was Jacob walking with his hip for the rest of his life. What the heck does that mean for us today? What does it mean? It means this: God loves to mark those who walk with Him. He loves to mark you with His presence so that the world will look at you and say, man, you stand out. Why are you so different? Why do you handle pressure so different? Why can you stand in the fire and the fire doesn't touch you? You know why? Because I've been marked with the presence of my God. The trouble is, as believers, we don't want Him to mark us. We want to walk the walk of dignity. Want to impress the world. I got it all together, man. My retirement fund, my kids, I got it all figured out. You're struggling with the purposes of God. You're not wanting to yield. Good luck in struggling with God. I just want to say it's only an appetizer. He's done this before. He knows how to get the victory. Are you all right, man? You might as well just get yourself humble in His presence and allow Him to mark you. Your wives are waiting for you to be marked with His presence. Then it says in verse 8, it says, this God, when He moves with His mighty presence, there's things that He does. And now this writer is thinking back again to a moment in Israel's history when they had no water, when they came out of Egypt and they were in the desert, they were dry, they were thirsty, and they were saying, where's God? Ever been there? Anyone? It says, just to remind you, Moses took his staff and in a dry place called Horeb, he hit the rock and it gave a pool that watered the people of God. What does that mean? How is that relevant to us today? What is the meaning for us today? It simply means this: God loves to mark those who walk with Him. In the places you get dry and you come into His presence, He will release life again. He will release freedom again. He will release joy again. He will release the reality of the life of God that is yours because Christ got struck for you. You okay? It's good news, friends. The gospel is good news. This writer is thinking back about moments when God moved for Israel. Do you know this morning you can think back about moments where God moved through Jesus for you? His blood, the blood of Jesus got spilled that death would lose its mastery over you. Man, I'm loving what's happening in this meeting this morning. Because your pride is getting confronted. You're struggling with God and you have to choose to submit. Otherwise, He's going to mark you in a way that is not fun. I like it. Why? Because church is not a place where I can come and sit and say, oh, dit was lekker, man. Dit was nou 'n lekker preek. Church is a place where you have to encounter the might of God's presence. He can shape you into place and you can say, I'm going. No obstacle can keep me. Nothing can stand against me. My enemy will fall to the wayside because Jesus is with me. Did Jesus not die to give His blood that you can be free. That He not open a way for you the first time you find an obstacle. He says, you get baptized in water, see how I'll open up impossibilities for you. Has He not prepared you with equipping tools and He's wanting to send you out and you saying, yeah, but. God says, okay, give the but to me and just go with me. Did Jesus not do that for you? What am I saying, friends? I'm saying this: God in the history of the Bible, God in the history of Jesus, He loves to move on behalf of His people. The big but is whether God's people want to move with Him. I want to pray this morning for those of you who've never acknowledged Jesus as your Lord and Savior. You've been playing the game, the church game, but you're not realizing that life and death is at stake. The only way you get life is you have to acknowledge, Jesus, I need your blood. If that's you, please raise your hand real quick. Okay, by my estimation, this meeting is full. It feels amazing to be and have a full meeting, isn't it, friends? But it also means that this meeting is full of people that knows the truth already. So I trust that people are getting saved where you are going, where you are moving with God. So that when they get to the base, they just get equipped. Or we should start inviting some of those that do not know Jesus and say, man, there's this crazy guy there at the base. They do some crazy things with the Lord, but I think He'll help you. Sometimes the Lord needs to help him, but I think God will help you. You're right. I want to pray for the men this morning. This is a nice invitation. Men, if there's pride this morning that you have to say, man, I'm bowing the knee, no more. I am not going to struggle. I'm not going to fight the Lord anymore. I'm saying, Lord, this morning I yield my life. I feel uncomfortable, but I need you to mark me this morning. Your wife has been praying for you. She's crying out to the Lord, Lord, do something with our family. Do something with my man. I don't know what to do anymore. This morning, you can stop struggling with the Lord and yield and say, Lord, I'm choosing this morning to move with you. If that's you, please stand, guys. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your courage, man. Would you mind just to stand a little bit longer, because there's other men that's still getting their courage together to stand just like you standing. There's some men, you're going to struggle with the Lord or you're going to submit to Him. You have an opportunity this morning. I can wait. 10 o'clock is still a long way off. There's an invitation. God is moving. He wants you to move with Him. Thank you, Lord. Bless you. Thank you for the conviction that you're making in these men's hearts. Thank you, Lord. It's going to wait a bit more. It's going to wait a little bit more. Not to manipulate anyone, but to get you to say, man, I have to make decisions this morning. I want to help you to make quality decisions that will change your life forever. Just allow God in. Just give him your pinky. See what he will do. Guys, if you're standing, you probably know why. I want you to bring that reason where you know the Lord has been pressing on you. I want you to close your eyes where you're standing and bring that reason to the Lord tonight, this morning. Say, this thing, I choose this morning, Lord, to humble myself. I'm tired of fighting you. There's the release of his presence. If you're sincere with him this morning, there's the presence. Jesus. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. I want to ask you, once you've had a conversation with the Lord, you feel that you've submitted to him, you've yielded to him, I want you just to open your hands so that I can know when to move on. For those men that are standing, once you've had a conversation with the Lord and you've been honest with him, just open your hands as you're standing so I know when to pray. It's awesome. Thank you for these brothers, Lord. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, you ready to receive now, guys? Your hands are open. Lord Jesus, I ask this morning that you would mark these brothers of mine with your presence right in this moment. In the mighty name of Jesus. More, Lord. More, Lord. That's it. Just receive now, guys. The Lord is marking you this morning. He's setting you apart. You will look different. You will walk different. Thank you for new courage, Father. Thank you that you surround them with your presence. Thank you that we can speak destiny over them this morning. Bless them, Lord. Bless them. Thank you that their ministries are unlocked this morning. Thank you where the enemy has come against some of you, James. He's come against you to derail you this morning. He's speaking a release. He's putting you back on track to move with God. You are mighty in God. Move with him now. Bless you, Lord. Just keep receiving. Just enjoy him. There's some of you, you've been prepared, man. You're ready to go. You're looking at the promises saying, yes, I know I want to go. I just don't know how to get there. If that's you this morning, you need God to move on your behalf. Would you mind to stand? You know what the promises are. You've looked at them, but it seems like it's impossible to get there. Would you mind just to stand? It's awesome. It's awesome. Some of you still need to respond. Just go for it. Just go for it. Wonderful. If you're standing now, just open your hands with me. Masiko tukuru bisendele debikiera sukuru seta steya. Nanki tebe shika aturu mosia setebe shakara bestistoro. Candile sikio kumbu kiteme shika ahere melefendos. Seya kanduru tuture mashindus. Father, I thank you this morning that as we stand before you, we can take authority against the natural flow of circumstance. This morning, I declare over every one of these brothers and sisters of mine that's standing, I declare over your lives that the natural flow of things will be turned around. and that you will start to know and taste the supernatural of God. It goes against the natural flow. Oh, Jesus. Jesus. I want to ask the elders, deacons, as people are standing with their hands raised, would you mind, just as you are led, just to come and put a hand on some of these brothers and sisters' shoulders that's standing before the Lord. You can receive, ma'am. He loves you so much. That's the love of God. It's the love of God. That's it. He will never embarrass you. You can just enjoy more. That's Him. That's Him. That's His presence. That's the might of His presence. It makes no sense for you to be laughing, but you are. Just enjoy Him. Just enjoy Him. I'm going to pray lastly for those who've been squeezed into a corner. The enemy feels like he's painted you into a corner. You're like, I've got no moving space. If that's you, I'd love for you to come to the front real quick. Feels like the enemy has painted you into a corner and you don't know which way to move. Just come real quick. Just come to the front real quick. I'm going to hand the meeting back to Marku. If you've been painted into a corner, please come. I do believe there's freedom and stuff that will break this morning as the might of God's presence moves on us.